to talk about the Pelicans season coming to an end and all of the rumors surrounding what next steps the teams is going to take regarding David Griffin and Willie Green and all that. So join in as we put a bow on this season.
The New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson.
Holiday, the dribble penetration. So tough going to the goal.
Hello, hi, Mason, Jeremy. How's it going? How are you, lovely people?
It's over.
Some might say it's been over for a while, but now it's officially over.
You know what's not over is Mason's lighting situation. Our boy, whoever it was, they still didn't give us
Justin,
the super chats to get Mason the lamp. I mean, come on, man. We had all season for you to do that. We could have upgraded Mason's lighting. I guess it's just not how it's going to work. But welcome, everybody. Welcome to the show. I see a lot of stuff has populated into the chat, and I promise we'll get to your questions and cover a lot of ground here. But, of course, we got to drive the show first. So do I want to do pleasantries? Do I want to do the small talk? Are we just going to cut right through it? Are we going to get into it?
I will say this one thing. Salute to the guy I met at French Quarter Fest. Appreciate you still hanging with us despite what the Pelicans have done to us. So on that note, let's talk about what the Pelicans have done to us.
Yeah. Is there something to talk about?
Our friend at Fear the Brown at Blue Sky reported this morning that there are some rumors about one president of basketball operations, David Griffin, and his possible dismissal from the team.
Indeed. One Fear the Brown did Blue Sky that. Didn't put it on Twitter. I'm trying to do my best to not post outside ever again, but we'll see. Never say never. Yeah. So unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't really know where folks stand on this. Don't really care where folks stand on this. Over the last week or so, maybe week and a half, there's been a lot of growing noise around David Griffin's future in New Orleans, and I think this started off with folks just wondering like what it might look like. Obviously, the team has been bad. It's the second worst record in franchise history. I don't think it's a big secret at this juncture. Maybe it is that Griffin wanted to move on from Willie Green. I think Griffin would have, if he had the ability to, he would have made the change in the middle of this season. But at least that's what I heard. Maybe it's wrong. And I don't believe he was allowed to do that. And so I think when you hear those things about a executive not being allowed to make certain moves, you then begin to wonder, why aren't they allowed to make those moves and what's next? And typically that is because maybe they want someone else in that position making that decision and making that move, right? Or if you're this franchise, sometimes the most obvious answer is cost savings. Don't want to eat contracts and double dip and pay, another coach. And they're regrettably not my regrets, their regrets. They're regrettably doing that on the Saints side. And I wonder if they just didn't have an appetite to do that on the Pelican side. But, about a week and a half ago, this noise started around Griffin. Had a few execs call me and ask me like, hey, what's your pulse in the situation? I was like, yeah, it's some noise, but I don't think it's, concrete or anything. And then that steadily picked up over this last week to where earlier this week, I had two execs just outright say like, this is it. Like, this is it for Griffin. They've heard it from people that are not wrong on these things. So I'm just relaying what's out there. Maybe this is just a massive game of telephone. Maybe they're all pulling our chain and nothing's going to happen and we're going to get these secret extensions and everyone's going to be back and it's going to be great. But this is the noise. And I think Mark Stein published in his Substack. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read that. Was it Jake Fisher under Stein, or was it Stein himself?
I thought it was Stein. What I saw.
Yeah, I think it was Stein as well, and Stein kind of echoed a lot of what I posted about on Blue Sky, with regards to, hey, there's a lot of noise about Griffin. He added a couple of details regarding Griff not necessarily being happy with Willie choosing to play Jose over Dyson in the past. So we'll get into that. I think that's an interesting one. And some other, areas where there may have been tension. And then I've heard repeatedly throughout this process that ownership loves Willie Green. They just absolutely are big fans of Willie. And so there's a lot of questions out there from people that if someone else is hired into this position, will they have the power to make a decision on Willie Green? Will they just be saddled with a lame duck coach in the way that Griffin was saddled with Alvin Gentry? Will Willie Green be extended before this new person even takes over? And so there's a lot of questions out there regarding that. I have heard from some other folks that no, like this cut's going to go deep, and it's not just Griff. Like Willie will go too, and it'll be a reset. And it might come down. The cut might go all the way down to Zion, and Zion might be an ownership level decision. And the recent baby mama drama may have played a factor in ownership deciding, hey, they're done with all of the off court distractions regarding that situation. And again, that's all speculation. That's not something I would say that is from ownership's mouth, or someone with decision-making capacity. But this is the noise that's out there. That is the noise that is swirling around right now around New Orleans. So let's dive right into it. Let's dissect all of the different pieces. First, let's just start right off the top. Will they be making the correct decision if they're deciding to move on from David Griffin?
Correct is not the word I would choose. I mean, 21-61. That's it. Like 21-61. You have things going for you, but 21-61, and that normally means somebody gotta go or somebody's gotta go. So I don't know if it's right or wrong, but heads gotta. I said last year, man, before I was on this podcast, me and Schmidt would go back and forth. They gotta win 50. They gotta win 50. Winning 49 is why you're in this position. You win 50, everyone's paid and no one cares. He should have won 50 last year.
I'm in the same boat. I think, look, we've talked a lot throughout the season about the weird roster construction. I think what maybe I and others may not have talked enough about is like how little room for error there was in the roster, in that you had a lot of talent, but this roster clearly was not set up where if one guy went down, they could keep the train on the tracks. And so hindsight's 2020, obviously, but it kind of looking back, it does make a lot of sense in the play. You're really thin in a couple of places, and you're really deep in others. And I think they took their lumps, and this really went about as poorly as it could have gone. And so I think I'm with Jay in the sense that right, if they were to keep him one more year throughout the that last the year of his contract, like I wouldn't have been fuming, but I think this makes more sense than keeping him. So I'm good with the call if that happens.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of look at it is if this was a team that you were not invested in, right? If this was the Portland Trailblazers, I think that's actually an apt example because they just extended Chauncey Billups, after whatever he's done there the last 4 years. But
hey, man, I'm one of the few people that's like, I get it. Chauncey can stay, but hey, that's another discussion.
I think Chauncey's been better this year. But let's say it was the Portland Trailblazers, and you were observing from this standpoint the Portland Trailblazers, and they kind of had this up and down 6-year tenure where they only have 2 winning seasons out of those 6, and their most recent situation is they just have a god awful year where they secure the 4th best lottery odds. Their coach is nothing to write home about, and both the coach and the executive are in a lame duck situation. I feel like if you were observing it from that standpoint, you'd be like, well, what should the Blazers do? Get rid of both. Get rid of both, right? Like what reason, like what can you stand on to just like I guess argue like if one of them's got to stay or the other's got to stay. Like I think if just purely from a result standpoint, like it's been subpar. 2 winning seasons out of 6. That's subpar. And from a process standpoint, I think we've discussed this on many levels. We've had issues with the coaching process with regards to what aspects of the game are being emphasized versus are not being emphasized. We've had issues with the front office decision making process, with how they've chosen to value certain assets, how they've chosen to be reactionary rather than building towards a cohesive vision. And so in totality, there's just no argument, I think, to keep both of them around, other than like, hey, maybe we just want to let these contracts run out and do a clean search later, which is, again, I don't think that benefits anybody, right? Doesn't benefit anybody. So that's where I'm at, is that like on a personal level, Willie Green, super nice guy. Every time I've interacted with him, dude's been awesome. Dude was, I mean, he was like, I asked for an interview so I could like profile him like I think a season or 2 ago. Happily gave me his time, like great. Griff also like been super great to me. I have 0 complaints on a personal level. Like I will be rooting for these 2 people to succeed wherever they go. But I think if you're in the business of creating a competitive basketball team with a long-term vision, it's time. It's time to do something new. And I think it's less about why you're doing this, more about what you're actually going to do next. I think this is extremely critical. Now, if you've made this decision that you're going to make this change, then the decisions that follow are things that you absolutely have to nail. So let's give some attention now to one of the rumors that's been swirling is Joe Dumars. Joe Dumars is someone that has been linked to Pelicans ownership since Dell Demps. I know he has a pretty close relationship with Mickey Loomis, and he's someone that is local. He is someone that would come cheaply. He's someone that would be low maintenance in the sense that low maintenance in the way that Pelicans and Saints ownership likes. Doesn't rock the boat, doesn't get into scandals, doesn't rack up fines, that kind of stuff. Certainly fits the bill for what a lot of the qualities that ownership is looking for. I think that would be a massive, massive mistake. But I've been yapping for a while. Let me hear from you guys on Joe Dumars and the general philosophy of, like, let's say it's not Dumars, but Dumars is just a placeholder for the qualities that I just listed.
If you're gonna cut big clean house and have a plan, have a deep thought process, either way, if your plan is to get someone who's gonna be aggressive, that's gonna try to win, you need to attack the offseason in that manner. If you're gonna break it down, tear it down, complete rebuild, go. Let me know in my years 44 and 45 of this world that they're not gonna win games, which will be fine. But what you can't do is the half measure. You can't fire one without the other. Unless you're hiring within. Like if you're saying that David Griffin is the problem and you're going to elevate Bryson to the president of basketball operations position.
But let me pause you right there. For 1 second.
Go ahead.
If David Griffin is the problem, he's the one that hired Willie Green. That's David Griffin's mistake. So shouldn't that be another problem by association?
This organization is filled with problems by association. You just talked about
Being
the other
associated
team,
with the name
bro.
Pelicans.
You just talked about the other team, man. It all is all under one umbrella. Like, and the other option is the guy who is close to the president of football operation that everyone hates. So, like,
Yeah.
there probably aren't any good answers. But like you say, if you're going, unless you're going to just elevate the new guy, you gotta tear this completely down, man. You not even the Detroit of we'll let Trajan take care of it. No. Gail Benson, I need you to tear this down or go for it all.
The theme of what I've kind of been hearing, and again, understand this is not, we're not saying this is what's guaranteed to happen, but it sounds like what I've been hearing a lot of is, oh, the ownership really likes this guy. I don't give a fuck if you like this person, if you think he's got a good personality. I need to win basketball games.
I would just like to say it took us 16 minutes to get our first cuss word. After we are here. We are here in the live on the spring.
Chat, clip that. I don't give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck. Sorry, Mom.
Like Willie Green's like an awesome dude. I understand that Joe Dumars may have good personal relationships there. Go through the right, like Jay said, go through the right process. I don't want a name that's like kind of the favorite early on. I don't want there to be a favorite. Start from scratch here. Interview, hire the best person for the job. Full stop. I mean, I really don't want to hear about like who this ownership group likes, because you know what? I don't trust this ownership group's judgment for a lot of reasons. You want to talk? We'll talk about the off-court stuff. Like, don't even get me started, man. Like we want to talk about Zion's off-court stuff, and look inside your house first, So yeah, I'm
reach. Y'all gotta be live so y'all can see our faces. Preach, Mason. Preach.
So you know what's in line with a lot of what Mason said, and this is actual like concern from NBA executives, including some executives that have reached out to me just to kind of get a feeler for if this thing happens, should they entertain putting their name in the hat and that kind of stuff, just to kind of get a sense of ownership. And one like big prevailing concern that folks have is this ownership is obviously obsessed with nothing but cost savings, and a lot of those things that you guys mentioned in terms of like, oh, this group likes this person, this group like this person, are like mixed and mashed with the idea of cost savings. They like them because they're cheap, They like them because they don't.
Like the Kings, man. I'm gonna be real with you. We sound like the king. I guarantee this is every organization, but this person likes this guy, and this owner likes this guy. Like,
well, that's always going to be. Yeah, you're right. That's always going to be every single organization. But like the concern that people have is that, okay, this is a team that's never paid the tax. This is a team that has a massive pending issue regarding the stadium lease. This is a team that by outside NBA perception, executives think that the ownership group is just waiting around for the expansion check to kick in. They're going to get the $304 million, and then maybe they'll decide what they want to do with the arena. Maybe they'll decide what they want to do, or at that point, maybe they said, okay, we've had enough. We will actually sell the team and punt it off to somebody else, right? There are willing buyers, by the way, on the topic of selling teams. There are willing buyers, multiple buyers that this group has turned down, which is, I think, insane to me that you have folks willing to cut you several $1 billion. I don't know what the team's going to be valued at, but I would assume somewhere from $2.5 billion to $3 billion is the range for this team. Maybe I'm wrong, but I would assume that's the range, even if it's $2 billion, right? Let's just be super conservative and say it's $2 billion. They bought it for $338 million. They've had an almost 10x return on their investment, and they're refusing. Well, not refusing. Maybe that's strong. Like, they don't want to sell to people who would perhaps be willing to not have a cost-cutting approach with regards to the team, right? You can't cry poor and then not sell the team. Like, that's insane to me. You can't be like, we don't want to have the money to do this. We don't have the liquidity to do this. We don't got to do this. And then when there's someone that's willing to cut you a big fat check, like, yeah, you know what? We're good. We're not going to sell it.
Yeah, and real quick, the point around the guess on the sale price, like the Charlotte Hornets sold for $3 billion, right? A couple years ago. Like that's what we're talking
Charlotte
about
Hornets.
here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Boston going for 6.1 just re-elevated everybody else, right? So like it seems like 3 is the floor here.
I will say wealthy people crying poor and then not spending and then wanting to have everyone else paying for their stuff. It's a tale as old as time. These wealthy motherfuckers don't want to spend shit if they ain't got to.
Yeah, it's honestly, you know what? I will save. I mean, look, this is the perception out there. They may very well, you know, if they decide to make a move, they may very well be like, look, we're going to do a similar thing to what we did last time in that we hired a consulting firm, right? This is a group that's not going to be familiar with.
They don't know shit. They don't know nothing, man. I hate consulting firms.
This is not an ownership group that's going to be familiar with, like, who is the assistant GM on the Thunder right now, or who's the guy that's behind Mike Zarin on the Celtics. You know, who is the up and comer over on the Heat. You know, they don't know any of these names, right? And that's okay. Like, there's probably 25 other owners that also don't know any of these names, right? Maybe I would say 5 is being generous. 5 owners is being generous that might be like involved at that level. So what do rich people do? They hire somebody else to tell them what to do. And the name that is recommended by the NBA comes endorsed by Adam Silver himself as a consulting firm called Sportsology. And the guy who runs it his name is Mike Ford. And that is who they hired the first time around. Adam Silver played a big part in the post-Dell process with ownership and kind of helping Gale build an organization that is going to resemble something like an NBA org compared to what Tom had allowed Adele to build out. Like, if you were talking about rich people pinching pennies, Tom was amongst the worst of them. But Adam Silver recommended this guy, Mike Ford. They recommended a bunch of names. Ultimately, the Pelicans ended up interviewing David Griffin, Gerson Rosas, Trajan Langdon, Tommy Shepard, and I think maybe a couple of other names. And obviously, Danny Ferry was still in the building. The Dumars rumors were still circling, but note this, he was nowhere near the finalist group, right? The guys who got called back for interviews was that group. That was the short group that got called back for interviews. And then it came down to, I think their top 3 choices were Ferry, Griffin, and I want to say Rosas. I think Trajan, they expressed, blew them away in the interview process. However, they were wary of hiring someone with 0 previous experience being the top guy. I think that was their qualm there. And so eventually they hired Griffin, and Griffin's like, I need the money. Let me go get Trajan too. And that's how they got to this. But they were going to hire a sports firm. I could easily see them hiring the same firm. And look, ownership, if anyone in ownership is listening, cut me the check. I'll give you the list. I'll give you the same list. I'll give you a better list. I promise.
The check ain't
I can arrange those interviews. I can find those numbers.
Put something on the pod, man. We'll take care of the rest. Put something on the pod.
Give us a super chat.
I was just about to say.
Get Mason some lighting. I'll give you a list.
You made a great point about the Dumar situation, that he didn't get anywhere near the finalist round, and now suddenly he's a front runner. Like he hasn't been running teams. He's the leadership position with the NBA, right? Like that's his role.
He's the president of basketball operations for the NBA itself.
Yeah. So tangential experience at best, but nothing even remotely that would qualify him from going from the bottom of the list to the top of the list. Like, come on.
What is this interview going to say? Hey, Woj ain't here. I won't
look at these rings
twice.
Look at these rings.
Look at these phones.
Look at these phones.
Oh my God.
Look, here's what's interesting is when the Dumars name first started swirling, I rolled my eyes, of course. But then I was like, you know what? Let me actually reach out to people and see, like, hey, he has been out of the game for a while. He has been with the league office. Maybe he's picked up some stuff. Like, what do people think of him now? And literally, the first.
Let's go.
Hey, you got it. Hey, I'm just fucking pulling. What's up, Grub, man? How you doing, man?
Shout out, Grub, man.
Hey,
Shout out, Grub.
just an aside, Grub, you've been killing it all season long, man. I appreciate your work you've been doing.
Takes over the press conference in a way nobody
Yes.
else can, man.
Yes.
Just don't be too
I love
loud,
it.
Grub, or some other beat writers might get mad at you for some reason. I'll tell you about that later. Anyways, I asked some executives. I was like, let me do my research. Let's see where Dumars is at now. The first executive I asked, bro, they said Joe is someone that is stuck 20 years in the past. Joe is someone that's likely not learned any lessons from their team building philosophies from last time and would very much like to do them the same way. And I was like, oh, that is not the endorsement that you want for someone that might potentially take over the team. So,
what is this counter? Two bigs are back, so I'm back as well.
Who's the Darko in this draft?
Oh no, I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say that, man.
Yeah, so you know what I'll say this is, like, I do want to put a little bit of throw a little bit of water on the Joe Dumars stuff. Is like I talked to some other folks and they were like, yeah, like ownership always tends to get linked with these kind of guys that they have a relationship with. But again, if you look at how they approached the last time they were in the situation, as Mason said, Dumars was nowhere in the conversation. So, like, I think there is some benefit of the doubt to be given here. But wait, Jeremy, you wanted to say something?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Oh, come on, hold on. I gotta bring this in the chat. John, don't do it, Stills, man. If we get rid of Brandon Ingram just to take all the Brandon Ingram shot, I'm going back. No, I'm going back on mute.
So, look, I think let's set the Dumars side stuff aside first. What qualities would you guys want out of someone that would be in charge of this? And yeah, let's start there. Like, what would you look for in a head GM? Because I think anybody that pretends to know every single executive in the league or have an opinion on these edge, assistant GMs or whatever, like, yeah, like, okay, I don't expect that from anyone, but I think everyone has a personal philosophy on, like, hey, this is what we think are good qualities to have in a guy that might run basketball ops.
I'm gonna let Mason go because mine is gonna be pretty quick.
Well, let's start with what we feel like we have now. I feel like Griff is a guy who I'd say he brought in good people into the organization with him. I think we all, from the front office perspective, I think the Pelicans got a lot of love for the type of folks they brought in to kind of build up the organization with him. I think we've heard at least he's got decent relationships around the league, and that hasn't worked out too much. I think those are good qualities, but that's not. Well, it's going to get you so far, right?
Hey, it mended the fence with Clutch.
Fair, yeah. I think honestly, what it seems like the one thing the Pelicans have lacked for the last dozen years is a commitment to a roster building strategy. I feel like Dell Demps, David Griffin, they've kind of jumped around and not really figured out the best. And look, Zion is a unicorn in that he's a very unique player to build around. We talked about that way too much on this podcast, but I think that is your job as the president of basketball operations. That responsibility to build around that superstar player falls on you. And if you keep on trying to change your mind around what the best way to do that is, you're not going to be successful. And you're going to end up exactly in the same situation the Pelicans are in, where you burn through your draft capital and you don't really have enough around that player to be successful in the long run. So again, Zion creates his own inherent challenges, but there's one person who's got to take the fall for that, and that's it's David Griffin.
That was very well thought out. And that's why you're the smart guy. Hey, man, your job is to convince the owner that you can still keep the job and have a plan. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know every exec which philosophy. I want you to be in the 21st century and be in 2025 modern basketball, but your job is to convince the owner that you do the job. And Griff ain't doing that no more. So the next guy needs to do everything possible to continue to have sustained success and convince the owner that they're doing a great job. That's their own goal, is to keep the job. So if it works, no one will care how you do it. If it works. And if it doesn't, you're going to lose the job.
I mean, look, go for it, Mason.
Well, I feel like you could argue Griff did all, as far as different parts of the job, he did more things right than he did wrong. I think that's fair, but I think the things he did wrong, he really did wrong, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, so I think, with regards to keeping the job, your name could be Joe Dumars, and you're gonna keep the job because your name is Joe Dumars. Like, look. But no, going back to the philosophical aspect of things, I think what all of us are now kind of trying to untangle is how much of this haphazard vision that the last two execs have had has been solely due to ownership. How much has it been a personal flaw in their team building philosophies and their general approach to team building, right? That is a question that I feel none of us are equipped to answer. I've tried to reach out to the appropriate parties to kind of get insight onto that, and I've heard it both ways, right? So that doesn't lead us anywhere. I've heard it that, yes, it's because of ownership perpetually chasing after the 8th seed and play in. What they would love is to be a first-round team, collect the playoff gate, get the playoff bonuses for the players, do all that kind of stuff, be mildly relevant because it keeps the fan engaged. And they would love to do that. They would love to not spend money on it and do it while ducking the tax. Because an example that someone in the ownership group loves to cite is how much money the Bucks lost the year they won the championship, to which I think is a massive loser mentality. It's like what?
Why on a team? Why on a team?
And don't get us wrong, a lot of these owners have that loser ass mentality, but we're talking about the one that we are emotionally invested in. Don't be losers, man.
So
don't think like losers.
So what I will say is, they have made money on this team outside of just the valuation increasing. Every time they duck the tax, the redistribution check hits, and they go from being operationally negative to in the black. And that has been a great boon that James Dolan, other rich person that loves to pinch pennies, has been crying to the league about for forever. What it seems like he's just every year, it's like, the league redistribution system isn't fair. The rich teams subsidize the poor teams. This is communism or something like that. I don't know what James Dolan sounds like. So I think whoever ends up getting hired, it's far more important to me that they're fully enabled to execute their philosophy versus having a philosophy that I completely align with, right? You may have a completely different philosophy, as long as you're allowed to execute on that with full power, no restrictions, not getting saddled by the coaches of the previous regime, not just coaches of the previous regime. You got to make a coaching change, but you got to keep the staff from everybody else, hey, we moved Griff, but you got to keep Swin, you got to keep Bryson, you got to keep everyone else down because we don't want to pay out their contracts. And it's like, look, those people might actually be really, really great at their jobs. And honestly, like, we've talked a lot about Bryson and what he's accomplished. We've talked about a lot about some of the other people on the Pelicans. I don't want any of them to lose a job. But what I do want is the next guy who's hired to be able to make that decision for himself. I think that's an easy ask. But Mason, you had talked about on Blue Sky earlier about, well, what if they just hire someone? What was it that you said? You'd mentioned in the context of Zion, which I think is the next stage that I want to get to. But
more or less just that you can let the next president of basketball operations hire who they want, but if you're hiring that person, because they're aligned to what you want them to do, then it's all mirage, right?
Yeah.
And so that's effectively what it is. It's like, yeah, that you can let them make a decision, but if it's the decision you want, then you're only going to hire that person who's going to make the decision that you want. Then, yeah, forget it.
I guess I will give her a little credit. Like the David Griffin hire is something that we didn't expect. She spent the money, got the biggest name she could, bought a brand new facility, got the biggest medical. At the time, he was I can't even think of his name, is escaping me, but
Aaron Nelson.
Aaron Nelson, yes, big name. Medical field, like she did everything that we would say ask for. Didn't know if their philosophies aligned, but she got the biggest fish in the pond, and look where we are now. So I just want to give her that credit per se.
That's completely valid, because after Griff's first round interview, the intel to all of the local media was, oh, this guy is really full of himself. Ownership is not going to hire him. Like that was like and then they hired him, right? That's what they did. And that this had been Griff, who at that time had turned down several jobs. He had he had turned down several jobs because they weren't the right
like
fit.
The Knicks job, I believe he turned down Knicks jobs before then.
I think so. Yeah, there was a couple of them. So there's that. But you know what's interesting about Miss B is when the ownership was transitioning, you know, and the NBA and David Stern were, and I guess the board of governors were the owners of this team. And during that time, when they were looking for who wanted to buy the team, there weren't many people who wanted to buy the team and also keep it in New Orleans. And so Stern and them actually kind of basically cooked the books so Tom could buy it. And out of Tom's group, Gail was the only one that was like, I want this team. Like the rest of them, the football people were like, we don't really get this. Like, I don't know why would you want to do that? But Gail kept on insisting, I want this team. And I think that's important. I think I guess it makes sense with how she's operated compared to Tom, right? But it doesn't change the other football people that are around her, that are advising her, that are part of the ownership group, that have a lot of say in the business decisions. And so I think that is the concerning part for all of us.
Yeah. Look inward. Inward.
So one thing I'll say is we haven't touched on Zion yet, and I think that is an important one. I think we touched on it early in the pod that we're all in agreement that whoever gets hired should be the one to take stock of the team and decide what they want to do with the players and which direction they want to go in. But what are your thoughts on a possibility that moving Zion is an ownership level directive, and that is something that they're going to direct the next person to do?
I don't think they should direct them to do it. You hire this person to make that decision, and you live with the decision that they come up with. Now, I'm not gonna lie, if it was me, I'm keeping the biggest motherfucking tees in the NBA. Like, I'm like, that motherfucker can do that and we'll make it happen. But Gail should not lead the charge in how this happens, how this transpires. Hire who you want and have that person make the decision.
Yeah. If the rationale from ownership had to do with nothing more than what's on the floor, I would still not want it. I would obviously want the person in charge to make a decision, but I would be less concerned, because in theory, if you tie this back to Schmidt, what you were saying about what ownership would love, to just be the 8th seed every year and really just, be fine with that and collect the checks for playoff games. Zion gets you the opposite of that, right? With the player he is and the health he's had throughout his career, he's boom or bust. And so when he booms, you're going to be in potentially a great spot. But if not, then you're where we are right now. And so if that was the rationale from ownership, it would be very on brand for ownership, and I would be pissed about it, but I would be okay with not okay with it, but I would at least understand it. Versus if I think it's more about stuff that's not related to what's going on the floor, which makes me feel much more angry.
So we've talked about this. You're listening to us. I know we've talked about you the whole podcast. The AC went 48-34 this year. Like Boomer Bust is still you're gonna need a little bit of luck
in the Western Conference.
In the Western Conference, okay.
I think it's a way more sustainable philosophy in the East. Like Indiana did it for years in the East because the East is terrible, East, right? The Wizards attempted to do it in the East because they were like, "We're in the East, we should try to do this." Like, it's I don't know,
which may play a part in this dismissal because the guy who was second in command went to the East and he's not even going to make the play-in. He's going to the playoffs with a 44-38 record, but no one's going to care about that part because reception.
Yeah, someone look up the record against the West there. Anyways, look, that yeah. I think the Zion stuff he made headlines. I think these were some of the tamest headlines that Zion has ever been involved in with regard, like when you just measure it on like the national scale. Like, did Stephen A. Smith didn't catch his radar at all? Like, did anyone in ESPN talk about this? But okay, yeah, I thought you were gonna say something. But yeah, like did anyone talk about this? I don't think so. So, but he made local headlines, and it was because his baby mama chose to assault.
Okay. There's 70 of us in here. Hey, my friends, I need y'all to this don't judge me. I understand being attracted to a person who likes to fight. I get it. Okay. So carry on. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My main thing is like Zion's name wasn't even in the police report. Obviously, like, news agencies are going to get a hold of it, and it's their job to report the news when it's a person of note. But like Zion wasn't involved, to my knowledge, right? But like Zion wasn't involved. But it did create issues for the team, right? It caused a situation where team security had to stay behind with Zion, and they didn't have some of that team security for their road trip, and so they had to hire somebody. And it's just like that kind of stuff where like you wonder like, oh, did ownership take that negatively? Which again, I'm rolling my eyes because this is the same ownership group that was seriously trying to pursue Deshaun Watson.
Yes.
Like what? I'm not even gonna touch the
we're
not touching that. But Deshaun Watson.
3 first-round picks.
That's all.
And you
gotta
give
say.
him all the money in the world. Hey, you had John Gruden as a coach's advisor. Like, yeah, miss me with that, yo. Miss me with all of that.
Yeah. So to me, this being the straw that breaks the camel's back would be a level of unseriousness that I'm not comfortable with.
Yeah.
So I would say that, like Mason said, if there were on-court reasons or if there was actual basketball reasons, like, hey, someone called you and you have a massive package on the table, cool. You can talk me into it. Absolutely talk me into it, especially if the return is the return. But I think this all just comes back to like, hey, we are potentially facing a Pelicans front office group that is handcuffed on player decisions and coaching decisions. Like,
so Dumar's is all that's left. Now it makes sense.
No one else can take it. No one else can take the job. You take that back.
I mean, look, the option. Look, the other thing is like, I think we haven't given enough credence to the idea of Bryson Graham just getting the promotion. Does that not also track with how they've operated?
100%. I elevate the guy, and I'm not saying I would be against that personally. Like, if you believe that he is, the problem was the head guy, and everyone else, I understand their visions, especially like if he goes through the interview process and he becomes the guy that they believe he is, why not? Like, I would not be against that either. So, yeah, why not?
You just got to be really right? I mean, because that guy is not getting a 1-year contract, right? It's multi-year. We know I mean, sure, it might come cheaper. It will come cheaper than other folks, but yeah.
Yeah, look, I think it's a low stakes move, right? Like you talk. I don't know if I'm with you,
I
Mason.
have a
That you
question.
have to be. You have to be. Go ahead.
I'm a butt in and ask you a question. Do you think fans would believe that she is covering her tracks after Trajan left?
No, I would think the fans think that she's completely unserious. Like, just log on to any of the social medias. Obviously, I'm the first and foremost to tell you, like, social media is not the real world, but like, I think just the general sentiment from folks all of us talk to in this public space, like, is that they don't do enough, and they haven't done anything to change that image of they don't do enough. And so, if they were to simply remove a figure at the top and that's it, given everything that's happened on the other side of the building, right? Like what is it? You guys tell me. What is the Saints sentiment for that? I saw the Jeff Duncan article.
Oh God! If we're going that route, yes, and the kind of people can actually think the same way. They're always 2 years too late on their decision making. The ownership group would rather play it safe than take a risk. Like, look what happened the last 2.5 weeks. 2 coaches and the GM has been fired. And all you're saying is, what's taking y'all so long? You know, so
2 good coaches.
2 good coaches.
Jenkins, who's going to be the hottest name on the market. Malone, who's won a championship.
You know what I'm saying? So, to answer my own question, yeah, they'll just think that these people are unserious. They'll think that they're unserious.
Yeah, Mason, I don't even know what we were talking about, to be honest with you.
Just about the commitment you're making, or they would be making to Bryson Graham, and saying, you know, you can't just take a trial run, right? If you do whoever you hire, it's gonna be a multi-year deal, you know.
I think so, but to another degree, I think it's it's a low stakes thing. Like, I think there's a world where they just don't even give him the Pobo title. Cool, you're the GM.
Then we're gonna hear, well, Mickey Loomis must be running the organization again.
Yeah, I know that's. I mean, they're gonna open the door to those kind of questions, but like, I think it's low stakes because it gives you an out. It gives you okay, well, we can just hire someone above. You know what I mean? Like, I think.
That's interesting. Yeah, that is deeply unserious, but that's an interesting point because you don't have to. I mean, I don't know what Bryce and the other guys or other people in the staff's contracts are like, but do you have? Yeah, maybe you don't have to do any sort of crazy extension or anything.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would find it weird if Bryson's contract runs longer than Griff's, right? Unless there's been another secret attention. But like, I would assume that everyone's kind of aligned here. Like that like Willie, Griff, Bryson, probably Swin, like it's all kind of aligned. But maybe someone has a longer contract than the other. That would be certainly interesting if Griff gave out a long contract to Bryson.
That's just that's a level of cheapness I didn't even think about. The fact that they could just keep Graham or make Graham the head by not changing his title and just getting rid of.
Oh God, no.
That is diabolical. The only good part about it is that it's basically a 1-year stopgap. But that's not good. Like it's horrible process of decision making.
Like worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I want to interject this discussion with the fact that this panel right here, all of us. Oh, sweet. Hold on. Oh, someone said, "Let me interject your interjection."
Yes.
LA Sports. Shout out. We're finally working our way to get Mason some lights. LA Sports 337. Would y'all trade pick number 4 for Desmond Bane? Not having his best year, but as a proven guy. If not, what pick range would you feel comfortable doing it, if at all? Love this question. Absolutely love this question.
I would not trade 4. I would trade a 2026 and a 2028 with protections on it.
Does it matter if your salary is DeJounte?
I prefer it be DeJounte.
Okay. Mason, pick number 4 for Desmond Bane.
No, but that's only because of where the Pelicans are right now in their basically like I don't think trading for Desmond Bane vaults them up next season because of the other stuff that's going on. But if DeJounte's going out, I can be convinced for sure. I think.
I mean, the natural one would be
I would.
DJ,
Yeah, I would.
DJ and Bane.
Come on,
You
what are we
would?
doing here? Yeah, I would do
You
this.
would?
Come on. Yeah.
If it falls out of the top 4, maybe we could
So who's
twist my
coming
arm.
out? So again, you're raising these questions of like, in a healthy world, who's coming off the bench? If it's
In a healthy
DeJounte-
world? In a healthy
Shut
world?
But if it's DeJounte, Desmond, Trey, Herb, Zion, big man, that's 6 people.
We're back to where we were last year, baby.
It's the CJ situation.
It's-
I love Bane. I love Bane.
That's great value. That's great value for him, I think.
I think this draft is not that deep, and I would strongly consider it if I knew there were subsequent moves being made to shore up the Pelicans' front court. Right? You make a move for Bane, your salary flexibility gets very.
This is last year all over.
I'm about to say, yes, you make the DeJounte Murray deal because it's a great salary, it's great value, and you have something lined up, and it lines up in February.
What I'll say is this: I think the Devils' advocate on not doing it is Trey Johnson or Con Knippel someone that can turn into a player as productive as Desmond Bane, and obviously at 4, and those guys would be available probably around pick 5, 6, and 7. At 4, it really comes down to are VJ or Ace Bailey, one of those two players, capable of becoming more productive than Desmond Bane? And if so, to what degree? Because if they're comparably productive or even like slightly less productive, but you have them on the rookie scale contract, you've already exceeded value there.
Yeah.
But if it all comes down to my opinion, how you value the ceiling of those two specific players. I really don't think there's anyone other in the conversation. And when you put a player's name to it, I think I'm leaning towards not execute. Yeah, I think I'm leaning towards not executing the trade, and I think it'd be 2 reasons. I do believe in VJ a good bit, and the second reason is I now have 2 25% max guys on my team, but I don't know if Bane's a 25% max guy. You know what I mean? And so it leads me in a very similar situation as having Ingram and Zion, but you're not sure if these are like max level players. That's kind of where I'm at, is how much of an upgrade is Bane from CJ?
Is he just CJ in a strong safety's body?
I think it doesn't make, like I said, I don't think it makes a ton of sense with DeJounte Murray on the roster, but I think from a pure value perspective, the 4th pick versus Desmond Bane, 26 years old, locked into a long, fair point on, like, he's not like some bargain contract. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that at all, but at the same time, like, he's going to tear his ACL if he comes here, so forget it. I'm not doing this again, man.
I think Mason,
oh my God.
Mason, I've swung back a little bit. I do think, like, from a pure value perspective, you're correct in that you would probably take the sure thing, a guy that's a productive player in the NBA right now over something at 4. I think most teams would do that, unless it was like the Wemby draft and it was Amen Thompson. At that moment, I would have been like, no, we're Amen Thompson over anything.
And you've been proven right.
Yeah. now forgot. We turned this into a draft pod, and I forgot where I was.
No. We turned this into a money making pod, so I don't know. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, this can be whatever kind of pod you want.
So you're just gonna buy this podcast? And guess what? We're gonna let you do it.
Yeah, I can't remember. You were about to make a great. You were about to say something about. We were talking about Bryson Graham, and you were gonna say something, and then this popped up, and you're like, nah.
Okay.
I was gonna say.
You want me to read the question?
Yeah. Bryson.
Can Bryson Graham turn Bruce Brown sign and trade with Phoenix to net you Grayson Allen and Nick Richards, or just one of them? Grayson Allen is a 41% 3-point shooter. First point, the Cubs owner looks like Ted Cruz, and I can't have another player that looks like him as well. So that'll be hard for me personally.
So
I can't have.
You mean it looks like the Zodiac Killer?
Oh my
god! Mason, do you have thoughts on Mr. Bruce Brown here and Grayson Allen and Nick Richards?
I mean, could it net you? Yeah, I mean, if you put the right draft capital against it, I guess I'm sure it could. But
from which end? From who?
For which end?
Oh, yeah. I gotta look at contracts first before I answer that question.
So now this is where I'm gonna say. So look, it seems like our wonderful sponsor of the podcast, LA Sports 337. It seems like you're wanting to try to figure out how to put a very capable or multiple very capable shooters on this team, and I think that is absolutely the correct idea. If there's any hope of this still being a experiment where you're trying to build around Zion, you need players like Desmond Bane. You need players like Grayson Allen. What I will say are two things. One, I'm like 99.9% certain that Phoenix is still in the second apron next year. That means no sign and trades. That just cannot. They can't do it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think they are.
No sign and trades because they're above the second apron. You're correct.
Yeah. And on the flip side, for the Pelicans, Bruce Brown signing and trading and getting, I think this Grayson Allen's around 17 million, 16 million a year. And then I think Nick Richards is like 5-ish. So that combines for 22, 23 million. In incoming with net zero outgoing is not something the Pelicans have capped to accommodate. So they just, from a mechanical standpoint, even if I like this theoretically, they can't pull this off.
Phoenix can't aggregate salaries either.
Not at this juncture, but if it dips them below that apron, but they're like I'm pretty sure they're just like so far above the apron that nothing is
$25 million over the apron. Over the second.
And the thing is, like, even if they trade KD, yes, because they're gonna have to take, like, no one's absorbing $55 million of KD for free. I mean, Brooklyn. I don't know. I don't know who wants it, but
that's the team.
Brooklyn's the only team. Brooklyn's the only team that's capable of doing it. So mechanically, it doesn't work. Let me go back to the question. Mechanically, it doesn't work. From a theory standpoint, I don't love Grayson Allen's contract, and I think any deal with Phoenix, you have to absorb assets from them because they're in just such a poor financial position and just a roster building position that I would want significant assets to take on that kind of contract. And the reason I don't love that contract is because it's the same kind of theory that I talk about with Jordan Hawkins. I don't think that archetype of movement shooter that doesn't provide extreme value on defense, rebounds, playmaking, that kind of stuff is an impactful archetype in the league. I think like the best case scenario for Jordan Hawkins is someone like Malik Beasley.
I knew it. Yeah. I knew where you're going with this.
Or Buddy Hield.
That was the comp. That was the comp coming into the draft. Like I literally said, if you were pro trading a first round pick for Malik Beasley, you got one in Jordan Hawkins.
Right. And so can I just sign Malik Beasley? I mean, the next Malik Beasley for $6 million?
You ain't signing this one. He's going to get paid.
He's not going to get paid that much. I really don't think so. Because, again, you just saw what Buddy made. And the point I'm making is instead of trying to do some of these kind of trades, they have the mid-level exception, which is, I think, something they can accommodate right now, given their current cap structure, and they can likely sign someone that is a good shooter in the game. The guy I have my eye on, Ty Jerome, can shoot the hell out the ball, is a point guard that can carry you while DeJounte's out. Ty Jerome. If you want to be competitive, go get Ty Jerome.
And Cleveland is not going to have space to resign.
Correct.
Yeah.
Cleveland is out of space, right? And the Mobley Supermax is about to kick in.
LA
Which is,
Sports,
I mean,
3-3. Oh, go ahead.
No. You go for it.
No, I was gonna say LA Sports 337. No, thank you. We appreciate you. We're gonna call you a sponsor of this podcast. So thank you for your questions.
Big time. So the interjection back to Bryson. I wanted to comment on the fact that I think all of us on this panel think he's a very competent individual. And when we talk about maybe like any disappointments that might come if ownership chose to approach that route, it's not because of Bryson's job competency or really, like anything that we believe that he can or can't do. It's because of why ownership might be going that route. Like, I think I've said it before in the podcast, like, I think Bryson's going to end up leading an organization someday. That is something he's going to do. You talk about relationships. He's a really good relationship guys with a lot of players and a lot of people. A lot of these draft hits do not happen without the work that he's put in. And so, I'm not saying like he would be my first choice, like if I was running the show, but I just wanted to make a clarification that we're not trying to shit on Bryson in any kind of way.
Not
it's
at all.
we're talking about
not even close.
Yeah, just talking about how ownership, would approach that situation. What circumstances might lead to him being the top guy.
We can't. I feel nowhere near qualified enough to say for anyone on the Pelicans front office. We don't know whose job it is to do what on the team, right? And so none of us can say shit about that. And so I think it's an important distinction. And so and look, if the Pelicans have been just unequivocally terrible over the last 5 years, maybe I'd feel better saying that, and if there hadn't been changes. But like I said earlier about Griff, like there are things that he did well. When I say it's the entire front office, right? It's not just him who's doing those things. The draft is a key one, right? The Pelicans have done pretty damn well in the draft over Griffin's tenure, and there's other guys who had a lot to do with that.
And the first thing that I saw when they brought up Griff that he may be fired, the first thing I saw, he's had a great draft. That he's a great talent evaluator. So I already fired him. Like, more than a job than that. And we aren't qualified one way or the other to say how well a person does or does not do at their job. We're merely saying that the record and the production speaks for itself as a whole. Mm-hmm. And if the new person comes in and cleans house, so be it. Like, or if they stick around for the wrong reason, the quote unquote wrong reasons.
And I think you guys bring up another point is when we had talked about qualities of a head person, is that I think one of the biggest qualities that this next leader should have is empowering others to do their job, right? You're never going to be an expert in every single area. You're not going to find a GM who is, I'm sure they're all very, very competent at all of these, but like I'm talking about like niche level expertise. You're never going to find a GM that is at that mastery level on analytics, cap, draft prospects, scouting, like agent relations, all that kind of stuff. Like it's kind of like video game sliders. It's like one or the other. And the things that you don't particularly have in your wheelhouse, you have to be cognizant enough to recognize that. And I guess the word humble, I don't like the word humble, but humble enough to empower other people to do their job. So like when you buff out, like hire the best of the best scouts, buff out your draft team, like hire people to crunch video, for hours and watching niche prospects that are probably never going to make the league. Right. And I'm not saying they don't do that Like every organization doesn't do that, but there are organizations that do less of that than others, right? There are organizations that are protective of their status because they don't feel secure enough themselves or in their job, and they're looking over their shoulders like, well, like if I give this person this much power, should I have to watch my back? You know, that kind of stuff. So like there have been situations all across the league that reflect that, but the best ones are always going to be the ones to be like, look, I'm not really an analytics guy. I'm going to hire this PhD, this data scientist, and I'm going to let them do what they do best. I'm not going to pretend I know how to run those models or anything, you know? So I think it's a pretty big one for me when we talk about allowing the person to make their own hires and do all this yada, yada, yada. Well, you got to utilize your hires. If we give you the tools, just like with the NBA head coaches, sometimes you get given assistants. You might get forced upon assistants to improve an area of the game that you might not be quite good in. You should probably utilize those assistants.
But he brought him in because he knew him from his playing days.
Right. Yeah, James makes a comment from James here. It makes a great point that Nico Harrison built a finals team 1 year and traded the franchise the next. And that's an excellent example of ego, but also how credit may be dispersed and localized depending on everything else that happened there.
Yep.
Yeah. Man. Trust your scouts for sure. I think this is a good point to start wrapping things up. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, and so much ground that there hasn't been any kind of Shams tweet yet. So maybe
you don't understand how much I've been on this Shams bot refreshing and have some concrete to talk about for maybe 5 minutes.
But yeah. So, I mean, look, typically the Pelicans do exit interviews the day after the regular season ends. There's nothing. There's no, you're not going to get a press conference from Willie tomorrow. You're not going to get a press conference from Griff tomorrow. So I think that in and of itself is a sign amongst everything else that, is that I've heard. That's like, it's like, oh, this is another data point that this something might be coming down the pipeline and something might be coming soon. The final thought that I want to leave you guys on is, should they make this firing before or after, or no, let me rephrase this. May 12th is the draft lottery. And should they wait to make a decision on if they're firing somebody or not, or which direction they're going to go after the lottery? Or would you let the lottery impact that decision in any kind of way? Would it be just another thing that they would be doing shrewdly? Should the lottery play a role in any of this?
We need the info tomorrow. Now, you may make the decision. You may make the hire post lottery. That has happened. I have no issue with that. The decision needs to be made by tomorrow when you have these exit interviews before they face the media.
I mean, yeah, they're not facing the media. They gave us the players before the game, and we're supposed to have some after the game, but all of them had left after the game. But before the game, they gave us some players, but that's not like there's general player availability before and after the game every single day. Like every single game, you can go into the locker at that point. But what normally happens that I think is more abnormal is they have a day of interviews at Airline Drive, and that is not what we're getting. It's kind of like anti-media day. It's like media day, but it's like, it's anti-media day. But you will, at the very minimum, you get the head coach and you get the GM or the POBO, and we're not getting that tomorrow, and it's not scheduled yet. So
can I put this last one on, and then we can exit. If you get one, you get a better candidate. Yeah, you get the pick of your litter if they get Cooper Flagg. Because everyone wants to be the general manager of Cooper Flagg, because you're going to think, I won a championship with this guy. So, yes, if they get one, they'll get the best. They'll get who they want to get. So, yeah.
That's kind of what that's kind of what I was thinking too. Is that like I think you got to make the decision ASAP. But if you're going to use the draft, I could see a world where you'd be more quick to fire and move on if you got the number 1 pick than if you got a lower pick, especially given the draft credentials, if you want to call it, of this front office. Like, if you trust their draft evaluation process, that's about the only argument I can make. I still don't support making that decision after the lottery.
Yeah, look, if you've decided to fire somebody, you've decided to fire him, not based on the pick outcome. So you make that decision soon. You try to mobilize towards hiring someone soon enough so you can like have an aggressive draft process. Meanwhile, also not creating a lingering distraction that will interfere with the draft process. But yeah, I think everyone here has correctly assessed that number 1 pick makes this a hell of a more attractive job than dropping down a 6 or something like that. And that was always the case with Zion. It was the same thing. Like that job post AD. I don't think some of the names who apply for it if they got the 7th pick. Wait, actually, did they hire someone before the lotto? Because Griff was at the thing. Never mind.
Oh, Griff was at the lotto. He sure was. And he brought the
Never mind. Yeah.
They hired him for the lotto. That is true.
Schmidt's stupid. Ignore what he said.
Schmidt's not stupid. We need Schmidt because he brought the information to the public first. We value you. We love you. And you know who else we love? You know who else we love? The 80 people at one point that came into the chat. We love y'all. We love everyone who stayed. We love our sponsor, LA Sports 337. We appreciate you for sponsoring this podcast today. If you're still around, thank you so much. Thank you for tolerating my bad internet last week, and I got it repaired. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Tell a friend that tell a friend. Get our subscribers up to 600. Help us make the algorithm. We are not leaving. We will still be potting. This godforsaken team gives us content, and we're going to be able to talk about it. And with that, y'all have a good night.
Appreciate y'all.